There are jazz clubs, and then there's Ronnie Scott's. A room so small it makes even legends behave. If you play badly there, the room knows. If you play honestly, the room remembers. For over 70 years, Ronnie Scott's hasn't just hosted jazz, it's continuously tested it.
My name's Ronnie Scott. I'll be on as soon as the drugs start to work.
This is the story of how one basement in Soho helped British jazz find its voice. Post-war London wasn't short on music, but it was short on confidence. Jazz arrived here filtered, second-hand, records from America, radio broadcasts, rumours. A young saxophonist from Stepney in East London had a wild idea. He wanted to make London a permanent stop on the global jazz map. Ronnie Scott didn't want London to copy jazz. He wanted London to meet it. So in 1959, he, along with fellow saxophonist Pete King, opened a club that didn't care about polish, but truth and authenticity. So they scraped together, borrowed money, rented a tiny basement in Gerrard Street, and secured a public entertainment license to be able to host live music. Britain's strict musicians' union rules also meant foreign jazz stars could not easily perform, so the early club relied heavily on British players. It was a struggle, but they had their club. Low ceiling, tight tables, no distance between performer and audience. This wasn't a nightclub, it was a proving ground. Then something unusual happened. Because of union rules, American jazz musicians often couldn't play long UK tours until the early 1960s. Pressure from promoters, clubs like Ronnie Scott's, and growing public demand led to a new reciprocal exchange system, allowing American stars to play in the UK in return for British stars appearing abroad. The club practically transformed overnight. Because of this, suddenly, London audiences weren't just hearing records, they were hearing breath, they were hearing mistakes, they were experiencing true magic. Dexter Gordon, Sonny Rollins, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. And crucially, British musicians weren't watching from the back of a theatre, they were standing 10 feet away. This is where British jazz stopped imitating accents and started forming sentences. Ronnie Scott's moved from its original Gerrard Street Chinatown basement to 47 Frith Street in 1965, driven by a simple but urgent truth. The club had outgrown itself. The original room was too small, too cramped, and increasingly unable to meet demand as international artists and audiences flocked in. And it was Ronnie Scott and Pete King's shared decision to find a bigger, more permanent home that could match the club's rising stature. The move took several months of planning, fundraising, and logistical juggling, but the vision was clear. Frith Street offered space, visibility, and longevity, allowing Ronnie's to evolve from a cult basement into a world-class jazz institution without losing its dark, intimate soul. Ronnie Scott's has a reputation among musicians. It doesn't forgive laziness, it doesn't reward volume, and it absolutely exposes singers. You can't hide behind reverb, you can't bluff your way through phrasing, and if you don't mean it, the silence gets loud. That's why Ronnie Scott's still feels like an exam, not of technique, of honesty. The club also captured musicians off guard. Charles Mingus arguing, Miles Davis barely acknowledging the room, Nina Simone turning a set into a confrontation. This wasn't glamour jazz, it was human jazz. But as was Ronnie and Pete's intention all along, it became one of the most authentic jazz clubs in Britain. Ronnie Scott's didn't polish artists into icons. It showed you who they were on a Tuesday night. But it wasn't just the idea of the club that made Ronnie Scott's matter. It was what happened inside it. Performances, personalities, and moments that echo far beyond Soho, London. In 1962, just a few years after opening, Ronnie and Pete welcomed their first major transatlantic guest to the club, Zoot Sims, the famed American tenor saxophonist. At this time, it felt like a major door opening. Sims' residency, weeks of nightly performances, told the world London was no longer a side note but a destination. From there, an extraordinary procession followed. Saxophonists like Johnny Griffin, Lee Konitz, Sonny Rollins and Sonny Stitt arrived on Frith Street, blowing hard bop and bebop right into British ears. Even UK players like Tubby Hayes and Dick Morrissey would join them for late-night jam sessions that became the stuff of legend. Then there are the albums that carry the room into history. In April 1974, Ella Fitzgerald, the First Lady of Song, recorded a live set at Ronnie Scott's that became Ella in London. This wasn't just a gig, it was her only live album ever recorded in England, captured right here in this club.
I must make an apology because the only time I sing this song is when I play England. It never became a hit anywhere else.
And then there's the story that blurs jazz with rock history. On September 16th, 1970, Jimi Hendrix walked onto that stage, not as a headline act, but in a jam session with Eric Burdon and War. 2 days later, Hendrix passed away. This was widely regarded as his final public performance, and the last great moment of his live career took place right there in that room. That tells you something about the club. It wasn't exclusive, and it wasn't unpredictable. Legends came through its doors not because it was safe, but because it was real. And the list doesn't stop with jazz purists. Over the decades, artists from Nina Simone to Prince and Amy Winehouse have graced its stage, a testament to its magnetic pull across genres and generations. This was no nostalgia exhibition. Ronnie Scott's became a proving ground, a place where audiences and musicians met in close quarters, and where you could hear the distance between good and exceptional in the space of a single solo. Plenty of historic venues do survive on nostalgia. Ronnie Scott's did not. It stayed alive by staying demanding. Modern artists still want that stage because the room listens, really listens. And audiences go there knowing they're part of the performance. No phones, no noise, no escape. The Ronnie Scott's Jazz Orchestra is the modern big band heartbeat of the club, made up of many of the UK's most in-demand jazz musicians. It isn't a fixed lineup so much as a rotating elite squad. Players who read like sharks, swing like mad, and can pivot from bassy tight to cinematic in a bar and a half. They regularly front headline vocalists, tribute projects, festival nights, and all-stars shows, carrying the big band tradition forward without turning it into a museum piece. In a world of background music, Ronnie Scott's insists on presence. In recent years, Ronnie Scott's has hosted the likes of Ray, Anderson .Paak, Kenny Barron, the James Taylor Quartet, and many more internationally acclaimed artists who just want to be seen and want to be heard in one of the most respected jazz clubs in the world. It is such an iconic room. I've heard from friends of mine who were there that legends such as Prince and Stevie Wonder have just popped by to catch a late night set. Michael Bublé swung by with his whole band, knowing that they'll hear the best jazz in the country. At the heart of the club's identity today are resident groups like the Ronnie Scott's All-Stars, a collective of top-flight jazz players who carry the club's sound forwards in concerts and festival specials. Soul Family, an ensemble blending jazz with soul, R&B and funk that appears regularly in the club's programming. These crews are part of what keeps the club's vibe both rooted in tradition and alive with contemporary groove. In February 2026, Ronnie Scott's reopened its previously dormant upstairs space as a purpose-built 140-capacity performance room called Upstairs at Ronnie's, complete with top-spec Yamaha instruments, upgraded acoustics, and a plush, intimate environment for world-class music. This new space broadens the club's palette beyond jazz into soul, R&B, gospel, hip-hop, global music, and even classical. Upcoming sessions include performances and hosting by the likes of Charlene Hector, Georgia Cecil, Emma Smith, Soul Family's Natalie Williams, Enrico Tommaso, and Brendan Riley. I'm fortunate enough to say that I know and have met many of these fantastic artists. If you can catch them, you should. This expansion reflects Ronnie Scott's blend of deep jazz heritage and fresh musical frontiers, turning this Soho institution into a multi-room home for wide-ranging artistry. For singers especially, this place changes you. It teaches restraint, timing, trust. You learn that intimacy beats volume, that phrasing beats power, that one honest note can outlive 100 impressive ones. That lesson never expires. From my perspective, it's always been the perfect sounding room. Stood on stage, looking out at the 220 strong crowd, I'm confident that the technicians are superb. The sound equipment is of a superb quality, and the room will be respectful. Speaking of respect, here's a list of rules for the audience if you're planning a trip. Talking during a performance is not allowed. The whole experience relies on each member of the crowd connecting with every note and with every phrase. Phones are expected to stay dark and silent. Movement is to be kept to a minimum once a set has started. These rules are implemented quietly by the table hosts and floor staff. Repeated offenders are escorted out without drama. The club values highly the audience members' experience, and every care is taken to ensure that the music is appreciated to a maximum level. For a performer, this lightens the load and gets rid of any chances of this becoming just another gig where you might need to tame the crowd. This is a special place for special performances, the perfect space for highbrow musical art. Whenever I've performed at Ronnie Scott's, it's mostly been the Sunday lunchtime slot. The Sunday lunchtime gigs at Ronnie Scott's have been part of the club's fabric since the 1960s, and after the move to Frith Street, they settled into a distinctly cabaret-style tradition. Even at street level, the room remains dark, cocooned, and clubby, but Sundays allow a little more space for personality, storytelling, and singer-led performance. A slot where the swing stays serious, but the atmosphere loosens just enough for connection to take center stage. Every great music scene needs a room where the truth is audible. In New York, it was the Village Vanguard. In London, that room still has a low ceiling, a presence you can't ignore, and a very long memory. That's Ronnie Scott's.
Hello, Ronnie Scott's Club. Yes, we're open tonight. What time do we open? Well, what time can you get here? No, you can wear what you like. Just wear a tie. Nothing else, just a tie.
Next, we'll be talking about Chelsea's 606 Club, a tiny, atmospheric jazz venue where every note feels close enough to touch, virtually unnoticeable from the outside. You'll see why this little club is a favourite for both up-and-coming musicians and legends alike. Make sure you subscribe, show your love in the comments, and like this video to support the channel. Thanks for watching.